guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a video talking all about fairies. These enchanting creatures have captivated humans for a very long time, and I personally definitely grew up believing in the fae. I used to make tiny little homes for them using twigs and daisies, hoping they would use my little home made from nature. As a teenager, I grew up not believing anymore, but as an adult, I definitely feel very connected to that nostalgia and just general interest. Maybe it's partly because I've got Irish blood in my veins. And a lot of Irish people actually believe they descended from magical beings. And a lot of them still believe, therefore they still have fairy blood in their veins. But yeah, I've always loved collecting books about unexplained phenomena and just unusual creatures like fairies and mermaids. A lot of what I've learned today is actually from this book called Fairies, The Myths, Legends and Lore by Skye Alexander, and it's just a fantastic read. It just talks about absolutely everything to do with the fae, and I thoroughly enjoyed reading it. So yeah, let's get to know all about fairies. So first and foremost, where do they come from? So obviously fairies have been well known to be part of stories and fairy tales for a very long time, but they have been talked about in every culture since ancient times. Back then, humans used to fear them because they didn't want to insult them or offend them. This is because they didn't want curses or spells cast upon them, because back then calling a supernatural being by its name was considered rude or disrespectful. So many people back in ancient times called fairies by names like the good people. So yeah, fairies have been a part of stories and have been talked about in many different cultures since ancient times, with Irish folk calling them little people and the ancient Greeks calling them nymphs. They have been a part of stories and discussion for a long time and captivated us with their magical, whimsical, delicate, mysterious ways. So, what are fairies? Firstly, what do they really look like? Different cultures have had different depictions of the fae. There are just generally many different types of fae to talk about, and they all look very, very different. For example, like the helpful but playful pixies with their soft, childlike features, to goblins who are described as simply being mean-spirited and ugly. They all, however, tend to wear very earthy toned attire. What powers do they have? So the main gift fairies have is looking after nature and animals, but that is just the start. They are said to have been here a very long time and to be able to live a very long time as well. They also have a very clear sense of clairvoyance, meaning they have the sight, meaning they can actually see into the future. They can also make themselves invisible as well, because they can cross the veil into their own fairy realm, and they can obviously do spells and curses as well, and they like to do glamour spells. And for example, an evil fairy might make themselves appear kind to appeal to humans. Aside from their powers protecting the land and animals, after a day's work in the field, forest, lake, or wherever they reside, they love nothing more than to sing, dance and to eat lovely meals. But where can you find the fae? So many believe that these tiny creatures are representations of the elements, flying around in the air, living in the streams and rivers, dancing by candlelight, and simply just being protectors of the earth. Curious creatures are believed to be in the fairy realm, meaning you probably can't see them because they occupy a parallel universe which actually exists alongside our own. This world is described almost like watching the TV. The other channels are still there, but you just can't see them. Legends say that fairies went into this realm because of the destruction of the lands after being protectors of the lands for so long. An invisible veil separates this world between the world of the fae or the spirit world. However, on certain days of the year you might just catch a glimpse. These dates and Sabbats are part of the witch's wheel of the year. They mark the holidays Beltane and Samhain. So Beltane marks the 1st of May and is the peak of spring and beginning of summer. The earth is abundant and full of life. Samhain, however, aka Halloween, marks the peak of autumn and we're nearing towards winter and the nights are getting longer. It is a time to pay respects to past loved ones as well. But yeah, the Fae love spring and autumn because these are in between seasons. They love in between places and liminal zones. Some examples of these places might be between a field and a forest, at dusk, at dawn, between a door that separates two rooms, and a door that separates inside and outside. But yeah, the Fae have been known to be tricksters. As we all know, we should never step foot in a mushroom circle, but the Fae have been known to be tricksters to humans and actually put them in the Fae realm into the other parallel universe. This might be to punish them for destroying the land, or it might be just to play tricks and to amuse themselves. If it is because they want to punish people for destroying the lands or not being kind to animals, then I'm absolutely team fairies, obviously. If you ever need help finding something, however, always ask the fairies. They might just have been the ones to hide it in the first place. Ever lost something that simply just disappeared, not to be found, and you can't find it anywhere? It may have just been the fairies. However, just because fairies reside in the fairy realm, it doesn't mean you might not catch a glimpse of them. In lakes, on mountains, in forests and fields, flower gardens and vegetable patches, nourishing and protecting the wildlife and nature still, to this day perhaps. Why am I not a fairy? So that is just a general overview of the Fae, but let's now talk about the folklore side of things. Firstly, let's talk about the changeling children. So there are many stories within folklore about fairies snatching up human children. According to so many legends around the world, fairies snatch human children to trade them for their own. Many believe this is because they want to trade their inferior offspring, acquire strong, healthy babies, or maybe some believe it's another form of punishing humans. There's so much more to explore within changelings, but I'm just scratching the surface. Let's now talk about the will of the wisp. So I've done a video all about the will of the wisp, so you can check that out if you want to learn more. But to briefly touch on it, they are strange balls of light that are usually found around bogs and swamps. And a lot of travellers follow these strange orbs of light and it leads them astray. Many believe that these strange lights are fairies leading humans to their fate or playing pranks on them. So that's a general overview of the will of the wisp. Let's now talk about Morgan Le Fay. So Morgan Le Fay, or Morgan the Fairy, or Morgana, is a part of the Arthurian legend. She is King Arthur's half-sister. Of the tales, legends and lore, all depict her as half human and half fairy. Made her home on the magical Isle of Avalon, which is now believed to be modern day Glastonbury. Yeah, her story is very closely linked to that of Merlin's. But legends aside and folklore aside, there are many real life stories that people have linked to the Fae. This is perhaps one of the most famous real life fairy stories, and it eluded people for decades. This story is called the Cottingley Fairies. So in 1920, people really truly believed they had evidence that fairies existed. There was a series of photographs that were snapped by two cousins, Elsie and Frances, and they show these two girls dancing with winged beings. When Elsie's mother took these photos to Edward Gardner, a leading figure in the Theosophical movement at the time, who pronounced these photos legitimate. These images began making their way around the spiritualist community, and it wasn't until 1981, more than 60 years later, that these two cousins, they actually admitted these photos to be faked. These fairies ended up actually being paper cutouts, but they fooled everyone for decades, and one of those people was the famous Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the writer of the Sherlock Holmes stories and novels. This story was actually made into a movie, and that is called Fairy Tale: A True Story. And definitely check it out because it's a great movie and just a really interesting story if you want to read more about it. However, there are countless fairy sightings from around the world, like the story of an English woman who was on holiday with her daughter in Cornwall. They were walking down a winding lane when they suddenly spotted a small man in green, pointed hood and ears, and frightened, they fled. Another story is that on the 3rd of December 2009, it was reported that throughout rural Britain, people were discovering their horses' manes and tail mysteriously braided. Whoever did it didn't steal any horses and actually managed to get past guard dogs. Mad. I find it just so interesting. Like, even if it wasn't fairies and you don't believe in fairies, It's just crazy to think about. Also, did you know that elves are believed to be a form of fairies? And in Iceland, their tourist board reported that 80% of people believe that elves exist. In one particular city, 25% of people actually say that they have seen fairies. Not only that, but many people still to this day honour fairies in many different ways. Building a fairy house for them to live in, singing and dancing and inviting the fae to join them, a flute or ringing wind chimes. Just generally respecting nature and animals is obviously the best thing you can do. Whether fairies exist or not, respect nature, respect animals, eating only organic food, becoming vegetarian, supporting causes that protect nature and wildlife, planting a garden, maybe they'll come and live in it, leaving offerings out for the fae with things like honey or flowers, leaving offerings on Beltane and Samhain. Do you believe in the fae? They are still sighted all the time, all around the world, and depicted in TV and film all the time, and continue to enthrall us to this day. So that's just a brief overview on the fae, how you can see them if you believe, and just everything about them, the folklore and everything. I find fairies and the fae so interesting, and so I really enjoy just learning about it and everything. So let me know your thoughts. Do you believe in the fae? Will you believe in offerings? Have you done that before? And give me your thoughts down below. But yeah, definitely check out this book. It is a great book. I would highly recommend it. Also, let me know if there's any other folklore stories or tales you want me to talk about, and what your thoughts are on the series so far. But yeah, if you like this video, please give it a like, and hopefully I will see you in my next video. Bye!